When we start designing a database, the normal thing we do is look at the system or the information system in which the database design is going to be operating in. And when someone does that, the first thing that they'll do, or one of the first things they'll do, is put together an IPO chart, which is an input processing and output chart. This chart defines the elements of the information system. So it records the data being input into the system, and as we can see below, if you look at the input, we've got a member number and a DVD number going into our system with our station video library. The next column is the processing column, and you can see that there are a number of steps there that are carried out through the system by using the data that's being input to match and to then combine so that a customer's DVD loan is recorded against their membership number. And then finally in the output is the customer receives the receipt and also a due date of the loan return. So that's the information that's provided at the end. So what we've done here is basically a summary of our system, what goes in, what happens in the system itself, and what comes out. The next step in designing a database is putting together an entity relationship diagram, or an ERD. This entity relationship diagram, what it does is it takes the information of the three columns that have been presented in the IPO chart and then makes some sense of it, as in what entities are there, so what important players or what important bits and pieces are involved in the information system, and how do they relate to each other, and also what characteristics do each of them have. And each of these things is recorded with a different shape. So for instance, rectangles are the entities. So in this system we've got a customer, we've got the DVD that the customer is going to loan, and you've got the video library which makes those DVDs available for the customer. So the rectangles are the entities, or the things that either do something or have something done to them. The ovals are the characteristics of each entity, and these are what you might call ways of describing or the entity or some things about them. So for instance, the customer has a name, has an address, and has a phone. The DVD has a genre, has a title, it's been given a loan type, and it costs a certain amount of money to hire. And the video library, the important bits of characteristics for them is the loan date, the customer number, and the DVD number, so you can keep track of the loans. What's important to understand here is that each of the entities now refer effectively to a table. So we can see here that this is going to be a three-table system. We can see that there are relationships between each of these tables, and these characteristics are the beginning of the fields that will be involved in these tables. So if you do your IPO chart and your ERD well, it means that when you come to design the tables, you've got all the information here. It can just be transferred and maybe made a little bit more detail, but effectively you've got the important data here that you need to put into your tables. And diamonds, of course, represent the relationships between each of the entities. Once we've got this set up, we can then set up the tables. And as I said, once you've got that data that you need and you've seen on your ERD, you can start putting together the tables with the appropriate data. And effectively, we've expanded some of those fields, some of those characteristics a little bit, but effectively they're the same characteristics that you saw in the ERD for each of these. So, as we said, the structures were created from the ERD and the IPO chart. So now you've got a member table, a DVD table, and a loan table, which relate the entities on the ERD. Now, the next thing we do is a data structure, and that's what we saw just a moment ago with each of those tables. And a data structure basically is a table in itself. It's a table about a table, if you like, and has a number of columns. The first column is simply the name of the field, what you're calling it, and it should have some descriptive name as far as the data it contains. The second thing is the data type, and we spoke a bit about this before, but the data type needs to match the table. And here you can see postcode is numeric, and the reason for that is there are no alpha characters in postcode, it's all numeric. Width of a field only applies to text, and the reason you limit a width of a field is because the more characters you have in the field, the more room it takes up. That's not going to matter for a tiny database, but if you've got millions of users, then every extra bit of padding that you've got in your fields means a lot of wasted space in the database. So it's important to get your length of your field right. For things like surname and towns, you've got to think of what is the longest number of characters you're going to have, and you might have people with hyphenated names, or from certain countries, and for instance, if they're from Greece or Greece extraction, then often Greek names are quite long. So it's a matter of thinking about your customers and what number would suit that. The final one is validation, and we can actually put in a control for each input in each field to determine what's right for that field. So a good example of this is postcode. In Australia, it's 4 digits, the postcode. So this mask will only accept 4 digits. It won't accept anything less. So it won't accept 3 digits. It won't accept 5 digits. And if you try and put a letter in, it'll give you an error. So it's a good way of checking the data or validating it before it goes in. Data structure diagrams or relationship diagrams talk about how the tables relate to each other. We talked about the fields matching, and what we haven't talked about is that DVD and member table will have what's called a key field. And a key field means that this is a field that only has unique numbers in it, so no two records can have the same number, and the table is sorted on these fields. The loan table here doesn't have a key field, and the reason why is one of the relationships here is a one-to-many relationship. In other words, one member can borrow more than one DVD. And if this was a key field here, it would only allow them to have one DVD, because a member number could appear lots and lots of times with lots of DVDs being hired. And the DVD number, well, that matches across to the DVD, so that's a one-to-one relationship. And that's what this whole thing about relationships is all about. It's an important one to know because it's often asked in the exam. Query design. Look, a query, what you do is basically select the fields from the table or tables that you want to be displayed in the query. That's the first thing you do. So you get all the fields that you want displayed. The next thing you do is figure out what criteria do you want it to search. Now I've got 2 criteria here. First of all, I want it to look for overnight hire type. So I want it to look, the database will look at all the DVD loans that are linked to overnight hire types. And then it's going to be looking for something that went out last night, so before today or less than today. And it means that any overnight ones that are less than today that are still on system will be probably overdue, and you've got a phone number here so you can give the member a ring and say, hey, you need to get your DVD in. And that's the way a query will work, instead of someone going through the database record by record, which could be thousands. The next design tool we use is what's called a layout diagram. Now, a layout diagram is essentially a plan of how a screen or a document is going to look. So effectively what you do is all your fixed headings or titles go in as they are. But anything that's variable, and these are variable because it will change according to which record appears on the field, then we can put in 9s to represent numbers, we can put X's to represent alphanumeric text, and we can put 9s with slashes to represent a date. We could also put these little descriptor boxes in to indicate the font, the type of font, the color, the background. So effectively someone here can say, oh yeah, I understand that, I understand the colors, I understand the font, and they can reproduce the screen in the plan design that we put in. Important to have these descriptors in. And very similar for documents. Here is a document layout diagram. We also have descriptors here for our text, for our headings. You'll notice that columns, we have our normal 99 or XX or 99/99 for dates. You'll see an arrow bringing that down, showing that that's a column that goes down the page. And here we have the actual document that comes from this design. Now there's more information on design in the notes accompanying the website you got this from, and you can use these as references as you go back through what you're doing and when you're putting design documents together.